Campbell Newman, good to have the former Queensland Premier back after some surgery last week. But before we go to him, let me just say that the Liberal National Party in Queensland continue to be dogged by strange leadership and a lack of fighting spirit. Let's face it, the Labor government have given this mob more ammunition than any army would need. And yet I suspect the Palaszczuk government is still in front. You go to the front page of today's Courier Mail in Brisbane with the news that the former long-serving state MP and LNP leader, Lawrence Springborg, has been shafted from the LNP state executive. He's been one of the three trustees of the party, a position which has influence over finances and investments. It's been described as a shock move, not to mention it has infuriated the rank and file, who believe Mr Springborg is a calming presence within the party. And the rank and file are the same people who donate their time and their money for campaigns. They stand outside all day on booths. They hand out dodgers for a party that's only been in government 3 out of the last 22 years. Mr Springborg is known as the father of the LNP. He was at the forefront of the merger between the Liberal and National parties in Queensland. Whether that was a good thing or not is another issue. But apparently the Springborg service means nothing to this lot. The LNP are now in a position where the president, this Dave Hutchinson, seems to run roughshod over everybody. And these people seem to eat their own. It's a toxic culture. The Home Affairs Minister, Peter Dutton himself, has said that Mr Hutchinson's position is untenable, but he continues to rule. And as for the parliamentary leader, Ms Frecklington, she was talking tough last month about the LNP president and other backroom boys when it came to saving her own leadership. But on this Springborg matter, she hasn't made a sound. Ms Frecklington actually said the dumping of Mr Springborg was an internal party matter. For behind closed doors, she said, I don't comment, and I have never, and I won't comment on these matters. But this is the same back room that she said some weeks ago appalled her, and she accused them of leaking polling data that reflected unfavourably on her leadership. But she now says she won't comment and never has. I think the leader here is fiddling with the truth. She had plenty to say then, nothing now. Campbell joins us. Campbell, you know more about this than I do. Tell us what's going on up there.
Look, Alan, on some of that you've just gone through, I wish I knew. And there's an awful lot in that. I don't know if we want to bore the whole of Australia with just Queensland matters, but just very quickly, here are some, just to dissect some of it. Firstly, you've got a leader and a parliamentary team who, for some time, have not been sort of conscious of the fact that they're cruising for defeat, because they haven't made an impact, as you quite aptly said a few moments ago, and they need to work harder. I believe they can win the election. I believe that they'd be a great alternative government. But with 100 days to go and the COVID thing overlapping over everything, they've got a real issue. So there are people in the parliamentary, in the rank and file of the party who've been very concerned about that. There's no doubt that there was polling leaked against Frecklington, frankly, to try and wake them up, the parliamentary team up. But then you turn to this issue about Springborg, and I've really got to scratch my head, because he is a calming influence. He's a terrific bloke. He was a great health minister in my government. He achieved great things in turning the hospitals around and ending ambulance ramping. Now he's a great mayor for Gundawindi down in the southwest. So if someone did try to eject him, it really wasn't a very good move.
No.
But look, I just hope, Alan, that they can get it together, because Queensland needs a better government. We've got a lousy government at the moment who've blown the finances apart, and our economic performance is just a disgrace. We should be doing so well.
I agree with you, Campbell. Look, before we get on to other stuff, what about Queensland University, who appointed China's Consul General in Brisbane as an adjunct professor, and then he congratulated pro-regime thugs who assaulted Hong Kong democracy student supporters at the university? What the hell's going on there?
Well, this is a saga that continues to play out, and Alan, as you may be aware, the British High Commissioner, Australian High Commissioner to Britain, I should say, was actually had to write recently to Conservative MPs in the UK Parliament, explaining or seeking to explain that this action by the UQ wasn't an assault on free speech. That's the sort of the ripples in the duck pond from this issue.
Yes.
But seriously, I believe there needs to be a real look into the internal affairs, perhaps an inquiry to the University of Queensland,
but Campbell,
because now we've got Mr Pavlou being suspended still for 6 months.
Yeah, 20-year-old.
They'd thrown the... and he's only... he's a young bloke.
But it's interesting when people look about how we got caught up in this whole China thing. I note the Chancellor of Queensland University is the former Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. He's been silent on all this.
Well, I think from what I can read that Mr Varghese has come in late to the party, if I could put it like that. Perhaps he has a far more sort of a more level-headed approach to this whole thing, because the Vice-Chancellor, Mr Hoy, and the Senate have sort of gone on this rampage against this young bloke, who, by the way, his politics are of the left, but he has actually been trying to make a few important points, and they came down and they used the proverbial mallet to smash the walnut. And I think Varghese has come in as the Chancellor and said, look, hang on, guys, we really are going over the top here. And I think he's trying to calm the whole thing down. But I think there still needs to be a close look into this university and foreign influence.
Oh, absolutely. Chinese money propping up Queensland University. Just back to the politics of Queensland. What is going on with Jackie Trad? Why have they referred her to the Crime and Corruption Commission for the 3rd time in a year? What the hell?
Well, the first 2 times that the LNP have referred her, no doubt about that had to happen, and she hasn't come out too well. But the 3rd time, again, Alan's had me scratching my head. Yeah, essentially, they referred her because she supposedly interfered with the selection process for essentially the head of the Treasury Department in Queensland when she was Treasurer. Now, I just asked the LNP parliamentary team what they're thinking there. Maybe I've missed something, but the idea was of having a selection committee to then recommend someone to be the under-treasurer, as it's called up here, and then for the treasurer, the elected official, to reject that. Well, frankly, I think that's fair enough.
Absolutely.
I mean, if the LNP do make government, don't they want to pick their departmental heads?
Absolutely.
Or do they want people served up by unaccountable committees? I mean, it's preposterous. So I don't quite get that move politically by the LNP.
Well, she escaped. There was trouble earlier this year when she allegedly interfered in the appointment of that principal at the Inner City South State Secondary College, and she cleared herself in all of that. Now this business about the under-treasurer. Just on the other matter that she's talked about today, euthanasia. Is euthanasia going to be an election issue? And what do you think the coalition view is towards that? It appears that the Labor Party are having legislation being drawn up.
Well, look, there's been a sort of a committee of inquiry into this, a parliamentary committee going back some time. As a matter of the record, Al and I support this due to the battle my own mother had with dementia and her personal support for voluntary assisted dying. I believe it's a matter of conscience, and that's what I said to the parliamentary committee. Frecklington has said that she would allow a conscience vote, and really the person here who is at odds with Jackie Trad is actually the Premier, who seems to be too scared to actually deal with this issue prior to the state election, or even put it up as a state election issue or policy that she would implement. I think that's actually cowardly, given the work that's been done, and that the parliamentary committee recommended, as I recall, that this legislation be introduced to the Parliament. It's really sad that the Premier hasn't been prepared to run with this.
Yes, it does appear to be front and centre. We seem to be talking a lot about Jackie Trad, but I thought you'd be interested in this, and I'm sure you've read it today. She says she supports the coal industry. Quote, of course I support the industry and I support the workers in the industry. Stop laughing. She said, we've got coal and mineral deposits and gas deposits that are important to our state economy and important to the workers right throughout the state, and I don't believe in shutting down industries. That's what the Greens do. What do you make of that?
Well, she must have been with, the saint on the road to Damascus with that turnaround. What an absolute amazing thing, you know? Oh, gee, Alan. I mean, I can't look. She is from the hard left. She's anti-coal. She's been anti-coal for the 5 years they've been in government. She actually said only in the last 2 years that coal industry workers, I'll almost quote you here, should prepare and retrain because the coal industry was over. It was yesterday's industry. Yeah. So this is just nonsense, and it's part of the overall Labor Party push nationwide we're seeing to try and rebrand, to try and claw back from the fact that they will continue to lose elections federally if they don't actually change their attitude to this vital export industry.
Just before you go, Donald Trump now saying that basically he's going to stop any person who is a member of the Chinese Communist Party from coming to America. My God, he'll be busy, won't he?
Well, I think at last count there were something like 92 million members of the Communist Party in China. That's a serious sort of restriction, and I don't know how you keep tabs on. I don't know if the Americans have got great intelligence about how many are members. But look, seriously though, if that was implemented, that would send obviously an extraordinary signal to Beijing about the way that the US is viewing various things that are going on around the world, the South China Sea, the plight of the Uyghurs, for example, and Hong Kong, of course.
The language
maybe that'll make them sit up and take notice.
The language of the Attorney General is interesting because last week he accused the People's Republic of China, and I'll quote his words, of an economic blitzkrieg, quote, an aggressive, orchestrated, whole of government and indeed whole of society campaign to seize the commanding heights of the global economy and to surpass the United States as the world's preeminent superpower. Now, Trump's often boasted, Campbell, of a warm rapport with President Xi, but of course he's blaming China for the spread of the coronavirus around the world, and as a result, all of this has followed on. Where do you think this is going to end?
Oh, look, I don't know, Alan, but it's a time for quality leadership, if I can put it that, not just in America but around the world. We need to stand up for our values. We need to make it clear that Australia and other countries won't be bullied. I'm amazed at the way that the Communist Party in China is playing this. It is being poorly played. It might be good politics or diplomacy to actually pick the occasional fight, but to pick multiple fights on multiple fronts, that's never done anybody in the history of the world any good.
The problem,
nothing ever comes from a country that does that.
Yes. The thing that worries me, Campbell, just before you go, is that we are economically vulnerable now, high levels of debt in relation to the coronavirus, China, of course, being responsible for the leaking of the virus around the world. You worry whether they're not going to exploit our economic vulnerability.
Well, that is a big concern, and I think, though, that people now get it, and that's a good thing. I think now that there'll be businesses and governments scrambling to actually look at how they make their operations less vulnerable, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Campbell. Hope you're well. We'll catch up next week. There he is.
Cheers.
Former Premier of Queensland. Just on that Chinese thing, they've got 92 million members of the Chinese Communist Party, and 3 million Chinese people visited the USA in 2018. They're going to have a lot of head counting to do if they're going to stop them from coming into China, but they appear to be fair dinkum.